There we go.
Now I'm seeing the actual
I've got
thing.
it. All right. I'm going to redo that. Everybody, welcome to Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. We've got a special guest tonight, Peter Stroud. Peter, now we see you. Dave, now I see you. Sorry for the issue. I'll get that sorted out. How are you, Peter?
Right. How are you? Good to see you, Mark. Good to
Good.
see you, Dave.
Good to see you,
Yeah,
T.
man.
Been a
Cheers.
while. Cheers. Oh yeah. I hear
Cheers.
it's margarita night for you, Dave.
It's margarita night for me. I that just got I literally at 5:30 I'm like, I want a margarita. So I hurry up and ran to the local store
Yeah.
and got back here in time to make it. And
That's
Mark's like,
great.
okay, I'll text you in a couple minutes. Give me 5 minutes. I gotta make my drink. I'm
Friday
always
night.
running for
Mark-
the computer to try to get there on time.
That's all right. And then I rush to get us on live, and then I screw something up. It's just it's been my kind of week. But anyway, so
That's how it works. That's how it works. So I was saying, yeah, Friday night is margarita night usually here at our house. We go through the whole ordeal, lemons, limes,
Oh
make
yeah.
simple syrup, the whole 9 yards.
nice.
Grand Marnier. So
Oh yeah, that would be
is
good.
up
Now, if
to,
I just had some chips, some guacamole, some salsa to go with everything, it would be doing great.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
yeah. You know,
So what's the
my wife
tequila?
is playing poker online with folks. She's figured out how to do it on Zoom. She normally hosts the game here at the house on Friday nights, or about every other Friday night.
Oh, so she's hosting poker on Zoom.
Yeah. So what they did is they figured out this whole routine to be able to do it on Zoom.
That's great.
And yeah, it's very involved, but they're having an actual game with the same cast of characters that would normally be coming here at the house. So it's a busy house on a Friday night here. That's
That's
Oh,
great.
that sounds like fun.
Yeah. I assume you guys play some music too. I imagine, right?
yeah. Oh yeah, upstairs definitely, and yeah, it always gets a bit festive. We have a good time with it. I'm down here in the basement usually making noise.
Do you have a studio there or something or anything or
Yeah,
little
you call it that. It's sort of three
object?
sections. I have my area where I'm in now, which is where I have my recording system all set up and everything where I do that into things. And in the middle of the room, I'll show you later if you want. In the middle, I keep all my amps, and that's where I mic everything. And on
Mhm.
the furthest end, it's a long room, and on the furthest end is my workbench, which usually ends up being a catch-all.
Right.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
awesome.
I wish I had a basement.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I
that's
grew up with basements, but there's no basement in California really.
I was going to say there's no basements in California, right?
Well, I mean, there's some in some really older houses and things that,
Hmm.
um, like mansion style houses, but the average house, no, there's none.
yeah.
Raised foundation
Yeah.
generally
That's how
because
they are.
they're all made after the war pretty much. Like everything in the valley, most of it, if it's older, it was made in the late 40s.
Right.
So it was I mean, one would say cheap housing, so to speak. But by today's standards, made quite well.
Right, exactly.
Not the same kind of cheap that is now in standard building, full dimensional lumber and things like that.
Right.
If anyone knows what that's about.
You even lost me at full dimensional.
Full dimensional lumber used to be like a 2x4 used to be 2x4.
Right. Okay.
Like exactly. And
Whereas now it's like one by three or 1.5 or something
it's
like
like
that.
it's 1 or 1 3/4 by something. Yeah, it's milled down a lot. And they were also like square edged. They were, if you look at the old timber in the house, you just go, wow, that looks like a solid ass piece of wood
Hmm.
compared to the also wood of 2x4s these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And then also on the outside of the damn houses here, at that point in time, it wasn't so stucco is prevalent in California, right, for building houses, but it wasn't stucco then. What it was actual gunite, which is what they make your pool out of. So they would spray gunite on the side, which is solid, hard-ass concrete.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not going anywhere.
So you could literally hit the side of the house with a sledgehammer as hard as you can swing it, and it would just bounce off.
Yeah.
And don't ask me how I know this. A long time ago, I had to put a door in where a window was.
Oh, really?
And that would be your way of discovering that it wasn't that easy to chip away that guy.
No, it's thick. It's a couple inches thick, and it's solid, hard. You know, it's what they make a pool out of.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, that's an amazing old house, and I think the Echo Park area is James Trussart. I don't know if you guys have ever been over.
Oh, really? Oh, no, never have. It's cars.
Oh yeah. And it's a cool area, and he seems to have a pinnacle sought after house there that he's been in forever, kind of deal.
Right.
It's where he got it way before any of the values up. That's where his shop is, the whole 9 yards.
His guitars are super cool.
Yeah, super cool. Way before the house prices fucking went through the roof.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, his guitars are great.
They are. Do you own it? Do you own any of his guitars?
I do. Yeah. I own 2 right now. 2 that he made for me in the past over the years. One of them, it's really cool. Get it out of here.
Yeah, they're unique.
This one, I like the ones that are the steel tops.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that looks awesome.
That's killer.
Yeah.
Wait,
what pickups are in those?
These are TV Jones.
Oh, they are?
Some custom TV Jones with the rail magnets.
Oh, I've never seen that.
And this thing twangs. It's not a super high output pickup. Yeah, it's a really unique sounding guitar and great playing.
Oh,
cool.
That's super cool.
Cool as hell looking. But when I was in his shop one time, I saw this top where he had just engraved the top, the dragon on it. And I was like, that, please. I want that.
Well, that's for someone else. No, that's mine.
It was probably that way. I think I convinced him somehow, fortunately.
I've heard this conversation before with other people.
All right.
No, you don't understand. That one's mine.
Yeah.
But
make the other person another one.
That's right. Thank you for making that for me.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, those are great guitars, man. Are they heavy?
No, it's that was fine. And the ones that are all metal are they're hollows. They're not heavy either. Yeah. But no, that one's a great weight.
That's awesome.
Super cool.
Yeah. So, look, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. Your playing, your tone.
Thank you.
Yeah, you just seem to have really tasty. You don't overplay. You just have like the right part for the song all the time. So I think that's a great skill to have. So yeah, I just wanted to commend you on that because as a fan, I love your playing and glad to have you on the show. So again, cheers to that.
Cheers. I appreciate that a lot. It means a lot. Yeah.
So how did you hook up with Sheryl?
I first was playing just prior to Sheryl. I was playing with Pete Droge from the Seattle area, and this was in the mid '90s. And we toured as her opener. He had already been out with her for a month at a certain point, and then when I joined Pete's band, then later on, that was in '95, I joined Pete's band, and then in '96 we did a month with her again when her second album came out. And so that's how we first met. We did the month touring, had a blast. Everybody got along great. I just kept in touch whenever they come through Atlanta. I would go by and see them. And then out of the blue in '98, just as things were starting to wind down with Pete, and Pete was actually wanting to just stay off the road for a bit. And I got a call from her management and said, "Hey, she's putting a new band together and offering you the job if you'd like it." And that was how it started. Next thing you know, came out to LA and rehearsed around the corner from you, Dave. What was Leeds, over at Leeds?
Oh yeah, that was the best rehearsal place ever. I mean, I can't explain how good those rooms sounded.
Really?
Yeah, they sounded great. Do you remember?
No, because it was all new to me then.
Yeah, no, man. Those rooms, they were tuned right. They had the elevated. They had little elevated wood stages, and so it has that wood hollow thing, like a theater has, kind of,
Yeah.
And, the big room there and the two smaller rooms were amazing. God, I missed that place. It was too bad it got torn down, and it's a shame.
Well, that is too bad. Yeah, I mean that's.
It is now an apartment complex.
Oh, great!
Yeah,
that was needed.
Right.
Because right next door was Andy Brower's. That's where I was.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Actually, wait a minute. Probably not by. What was it? This mid-90s?
This was '99.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't there by then. But
it's January '99.
Yeah, I wasn't there anymore. But yeah, I was earlier.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's why I know Leeds so well.
Now, was this a rehearsal studio for touring acts or like for anybody?
It was mostly a touring rehearsal studio. I mean, anyone could rehearse there. I mean, technically, but I mean, there's only 3 rooms. Mm. So there's 2 smaller rooms and a much bigger showcase room. And I mean, STP used to rehearse there, and Steve Lukather and all sorts of people, But wow. It's like everyone rehearsed there.
Yeah, we were there.
It was right next to Andy Brower's, where I worked from 1988 through like 1991 or something.
So you got to go there all the time.
Well, yeah, because they have vending machines. So the soda machine and the snack machine. So you'd be walking over there all the time. Like during your day, and like, let me get a little soda.
You ever check out the bands rehearsing?
Yeah, I mean, I was working with some of them at the time and stuff, and I remember Steve Stevens rehearsing with this Japanese artist there for like a few weeks. Mm. I remember, Toto rehearsing there, and God, I can't remember everyone.
Yeah, man, I bet that'd be amazing to hear when you'd walk in there.
Yeah, it was. It's interesting sometimes when you walk in rehearsal studios like that, when you're there for something else and you have some amazing artist playing in the other room and you're just hearing it through the walls, Yeah. I remember distinctly sometime maybe in the early 90s. I was at Third Encore rehearsal studio, and I don't remember why I was there, but I was there. And in one of the rooms was Whitney Houston.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah.
And, man, she was singing. It was like a holy crap moment, Like you're just like, imagine. Oh, my God, listen to her voice. Mm. And, you're just hearing it right off the mic through a PA, coming through the walls, cutting through everything. And you're just like, oh, my God, unbelievable. Like, because she was an amazing singer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Bigger than life. Bigger than life.
Damn.
Yeah.
It was
amazing
good.
Voice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Really
cool. I had an interesting stumble into rehearsal. Probably the most interesting one for me was way back. This was when I was in high school, and we took a trip up to New York City with my high school drama class to go see all these productions. And we were staying at the Hotel Edison,
Uh-huh.
and heard this music, in the ballroom area. I heard this big jazz band playing in, one of the meeting rooms or ballrooms, and so I peek in the door, and there's Maynard Ferguson, directing the band.
Nice.
What happened?
Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
That's what you see in New York City in the
Yeah.
late 70s.
Wow.
Maynard Ferguson. Wow. So did you stay and watch? Or...
Oh, I could. I mean, you should have seen all the eyes darting at me, so it was like,
Ooh, speaking of that, I got a good one too. So I was at the Beverly Hills, no, not the Beverly Hills Hotel. The big there's a big hotel at Wilshire and Santa Monica there. Was it the Hilton or something? It was a big Beverly Hills Hilton or something. They have a big ballroom in there, and I was there doing something for Rusty Anderson, and Rusty was obviously playing with Paul McCartney, right? So Paul was there, Paul was there, and I got to watch from the sidelines Paul McCartney and Tony Bennett do this song together, and
Wow.
man.
that's amazing.
Another like little pinch you moment. You're just like, what am I watching? Oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
insane. Like, yeah, that's a crazy moment.
That is
Yeah, totally crazy. It was, I don't know if it was for some sort of benefit or something that they were doing, because they were doing it at this hotel. So obviously it was like an award thing or a benefit thing or something.
Yeah.
But that was super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, hey, going back to the Sheryl Crow stuff, just real quick. So what was it like for you getting that gig? Were you like blown away? Was this like, like a dream gig for you? I'm just curious, like at the time, how were you feeling about it?
Oh, I was tremendously excited, and it was at that whole time. The Pete Droge gig and playing with Pete, who's still he'll be a lifelong friend. He's still a really close friend, and we had an amazing 3 years, and incredible touring, and that was a real learning curve for me too, playing wise and touring and making records and so forth. And then just as he's wrapping up, then I start playing with Sheryl, and that was a big leap forward because she was writing on the success of her first record, and I had heard a lot of the songs and still remember where I was when I heard the songs, kind of situation. And so, yeah, I was really excited about it. And coincidentally, the guitarist who I took the place of in Pete's band was Jeff Trott, who left Pete's band to start writing with Sheryl for the second record. And so when we toured in '96 and got to know her in the band, Jeff was in the band. And then it was Jeff, along with a few others, that had left to do other things or whatever, in '98, I guess, that he's essentially who I replaced in her band. So it was it's that whole small world kind of deal.
Right.
But going into it, of course, she was on up there and the whole level of things, and the whole process of rehearsing for 2 weeks, and then the tour began in Europe, in Stockholm, Sweden, and we did 2 days of a pre-production at their Roundhouse Theater in Stockholm, and in January, when the days are hours, a few hours or so, and then it was a whirlwind, to say the least. And then we're off and running on a month-long tour in Europe. And then, the year took off from there. And it was one amazing experience after another for that entire year.
Wow.
And more of a learning curve. I mean, I appreciate you saying that about my playing, but playing with Pete and Sheryl in terms of playing with a little bit of reservation was what you had to do. I mean, I had to listen back to live tapes, and I'd just be like, what the hell did I do tonight? Why the hell did I play that crap, And, and it would be just disheartening. I was like, oh my God. And so then I'd work on the songs the next day, and it would mainly be just playing less. It would be the thing, it'd be mainly, or just things, just vibrato, just stuff that would bug you, And so I found that it was initially very demeaning to listen to live tapes, but then it was also the most helpful thing. So that was part of the learning curve, was just getting beyond that to where I could listen to live tapes and go, okay, I'm happy with that. I can deal with that. That's okay. It could be better still, but I can deal with that.
That's cool. Was it more driven by your own ear, or was that something driven by, say, by the artist?
I'd say my own ear, but at the same time, you can tell. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a level of expectation, and so when the compliments start coming in, it was a little bit later.
Right.
There'd be the congratulatory, hey, that was great, we had a great gig, this and that. But when it was like, okay, I think I might be, sinking in a little bit here. I might be getting, a little more into the foundation.
Right. Oh, that's
it just takes time.
What about gear? Like when you join a band like that, are you able to bring your own persona and sound?
That's actually a question. That's actually a question. So when you joined Sheryl, what was the setup on the initial tour?
I'm
unfucking believable.
Oh, good.
I brought out, which I still have, a JMP 212 50 watt.
Yeah.
Marshall combo, one of the Fawn Tolex ones, and
cool. I love those.
Yeah, it's a great amp, and and with her, and one of the 68 trim. What do they call the chrome trim 68 super reverbs? Forget what
the drip edge.
Yeah, and a super reverb, and in the years prior to that, was when I learned how to monkey with amps and do my own preventive maintenance on them, at least to keep the vintage amps working, and studying. What was it? What was the big? I should have looked them up to remember there was a vintage mag. Might have been the early vintage guitars. I think it was the early vintage guitars, and that were a newspaper like. And,
yeah, that was a vintage guitar. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there would be the guys in there that would be, telling you how to do all the mods and everything, and
to the fenders and everything. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I learned a lot of that because my first vintage amp was a Plexi 50 watt, and I remember dropping new tubes into it and say, all right, here we go, let's fire this thing up, when ping, and then just watch them just light up in the back. They were these
you have to bias them.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, I see. All right, I guess there's a few things to learn. And then with previous bands, was on the road and was taking the old heads out, and there'd be troubles. And long story short, there is a technician here who's amazing, and he's a studio producer engineer too now, Jeff Bakos, and he taught me initially pretty much everything I needed to know to get started working on the amps, and I studied electronics books and stuff on the road. Mm-hmm. So I learned how to get my old amps working and do sort of mods to them to get the sounds I want. And so I had turned the Drip Edge 68 into a pre-CBS circuit, and the Marshall JMP was the 76 50 watt, which was not a great master volume circuit. It was a pretty happy one, and so I redid it with more of, I messed with that and made it where it was just a post preamp type master volume, and then changed some of the values on the front end and all that. Just really simple stuff, and but but made it sound good. It's still a great sounding amp. And so I used that amp and the Super Reverb for the entire year tour. And then after that with Don Henley, same rig.
Someone actually asked that at some point in time here too about the Don Henley thing.
Yeah.
So you played with Don Henley when?
And well, that would have been 2000. So
okay.
Toured all the way through 99 with Sheryl.
Mm-hmm.
She decided to take 2000 off, and and then in January of 2000, I just happened to get a call about auditioning for Dawn. You know, see if I was interested in that. You know, and same kind of deal with that. You know, it was interesting with that. There was a lot of guys that came in, and I was like, yeah, right. I'm not going to get that gig, whatever. Or if I do, great. If I don't, you know. And it was actually Sheryl that put in the word for me. She, you know, like, you know, Don had actually called her to see if it was okay, you know, because Sheryl had played with Don on a previous tour as a backup singer.
Right, yeah, they worked together at some point, yeah.
And
yeah,
Don is very particular, too.
Yeah, he is. And I tell you, that was the thing I learned from seeing Don. Yeah, I had seen the Eagles back on the Hotel California tour when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And they sounded like the record then. And when I saw the Building the Perfect Beast tour, they sounded like the record, period. Mm-hmm. I mean, did not deviate one bit. So I knew that going in. I said, okay. And he even said, he called me personally to audition and said, Sheryl says you can Xerox a record, and that's what I'm looking for.
Wow.
Perfect.
So I said, okay. And, you know, I liked his use of the word Xerox. That tells you something.
Right.
I remember Pete Thorne telling me, because he played with him later.
Yeah.
And he told me, he goes, if an effect wasn't quite right for the part, Don would pick it out.
Oh, total.
Because if like that's wobbling too fast, you know, or something, you know, like
yeah,
not right.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah, one note out of place, and he would know and look at you.
Yeah, like Sunset Grill.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't know if I have the key right. You know, he does bends. Yeah. Whatever it is. Yeah, I can't remember it now. But they were just like that kind of bend because on the recording, it was one of those Roland synth guitars.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't bend it far, otherwise it would start tracking, you know, and do
right.
You know, kind of thing. So obviously I wasn't using a Roland synth guitar for the tour. I was
had to mimic it, guitar. And it wasn't quite to.
No, so I used the fuzz box and echo and did all the stuff to get the sound. It sounded really cool. It worked fine, but that bend. Yeah, I did maybe just a little too much. He comes up to me and he goes, Peter, it's just a little bit. And that was when I went, got it. You know, and I totally respected it. It was, you know,
Oh, yeah.
You want it. I mean, you think about how much work. And then I came to find that solo was originally a trombone solo.
Oh, really?
And that was what they had recorded first. And it didn't quite work out. It didn't, you know, they lived with it for a while. It didn't quite work out. And then I think it was Danny Korchmar who ended up replacing it with the synth guitar. But they reportedly, just copied the trombone solo verbatim.
Wow.
I see.
Interesting. Yeah, that's got to be tough to replicate. Exactly.
Well, and again, it was another big learning curve. You know, you can imagine that whole experience was just another one. Yeah, another big learning experience.
Right.
Yeah, he's a tough bird.
Yeah. So if you get it right, you get it
If
right.
you get it right, and you're golden, then
Yeah, everything's great.
it's like, well, I've always said that with people, with bosses over the years, or with everything over the years. It's like, I remember people back when I worked cartage days and things. I remember people not complaining about the boss and complaining about him and complaining about this. I go, man, it's real simple. It's really, really simple. Listen to what he tells you and do it.
Yeah.
That is the boss-employee relationship.
Right.
Summed up in just really simply. Listen
Get
to
him
what he
on.
says
Don't get in
and
the
just
way,
do it.
too.
And then you'll get a reward, which is your paycheck. So it's not like, oh, you know what I think you should do?
Yeah.
No, not your place.
Right. Right. You know what I'd like to do? Do that on your own gig.
Yeah. And
Right.
by the way, go to your own gig now. Because you don't have one anymore here.
Yeah, you gotta know the rules. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you got to know, if you're employed by a person, you have to know your place, and that person's the boss, and it's very simple. It's really cut and dry. In my book, that's how it is. It's cut and dry.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have this wishy-washy employment idea.
Oh, we're
It's
friends.
like they don't. It's just not. It's not about what you think. They're not asking you your opinion. If they ask you your opinion, then give it. But if not, keep your mouth shut. Do what they say.
And the level of ownership they want you to take is they want you to own your part as you're playing it.
Yeah.
They want you to play with that kind of conviction. I equated it playing with him, but they don't want you particularly always to deviate from it. Now, Sheryl's different. I'll talk about that in a second. But with Don, I equated it to like doing Broadway theater or something. You're not doing Broadway music by any stretch, but those guys are doing the exact same thing every single night, and they are, their parts or whatever. And so what you try to do is you simply try to excel at playing that part absolutely the most flawless and the best, with the most emotion and passion that you can possibly put into it. And when you're playing those same parts and you're playing the same solos and everything for a year and a half, that's what you look for. That's the perspective you take that you look forward to doing. Otherwise, yeah, you'd get bored with it. Oh shit, I'm just playing the same notes over and over. But then you would probably end up like you're saying, Dave. I mean, you would reflect that.
Exactly. Out you go.
Onto the next guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
On to the next.
But with Sheryl,
Yeah.
With Sheryl, Sheryl played with Don, so she was exposed to that kind of thing, and she was with Michael Jackson, and there was, an immense level of perfection there, and she had a good balance of both, or does still have a good balance of both. Where, you think about how much work they put into making the records and to crafting every single aspect of it. So naturally, coming fresh out of the studio, and starting a band rehearsal for a tour, that's what they want to hear, So it would start out that way. So we'd learn the stuff like it was on the record, and that's what her ears were tuned into, And as the tour goes on, then things would loosen up a little bit. And then you could stretch out, and then she'd stretch it out and say, hey, why don't we do more of a jam section here? Why don't we do something with the intro? Do stuff that would make it more show worthy, things like that. And if it strayed too much, then she go, hey, you know what? Will you listen to the record? Let's try to pull it back. Let's rein it back in a little bit, that kind of thing. So that's what's cool about her. And she's good about really sort of keying in on everybody's individual personality or talents or whatever the case, and trying to make something of it.
Right. All right. That's awesome. I just want to mention to people in the chat that we'll get to your questions in a little bit. Promise. Make sure you ask your questions, and we'll get to them soon. So I'm curious, Peter. So you also played with Sarah McLaughlin, right?
Yes.
And that was a period of time between a break, I guess, with Sheryl as well, right?
Yes, I had first met Sarah and we played the Lilith Fair tour
Mm-hmm.
in '99.
Right.
And then, it had been, and we had done stuff with her throughout over a good, let's see, it had been from '99 through 2011. So it was a 10, 11-year stretch with Sheryl in the same band, just straight through. It was great, and then I just sort of sensed that, okay, 11 years, that's a long time, and then Sheryl went in and did a record with Doyle Bramhall
Mm-hmm.
second, and Doyle had pulled together. He was co-producing the record with her, and he pulled together some buds, and they did the record. And then she had the idea of taking them out for the tour to support the record. And so at that time, we were doing things and doing yet another Lilith Fair tour in 2011 with Sarah. And so that dovetailed too. Sarah was putting together a band for the Lilith Fair tour. We were just going to play with Sheryl just the first 5 dates of that Lilith Fair tour. So I ended up playing with both Sheryl and Sarah on the first 5 dates of Lilith, and then just went on and played with Sarah from then on the Lilith Fair for 8 weeks, or I think more like 12 weeks or something on the Lilith Fair tour.
Mm-hmm.
Some crazy amount of time.
That's cool.
So yeah, that was how that came to be. It just, again, fit right,
It's like nice how that works out.
One
right?
one sort of ends and it just transitions into the other, or one temporarily ends and it transitions into the other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And again, just an entirely different experience, and Sarah, just an amazing personality, and and same kind of deal as Sheryl in a way, where she would want to hear things a certain way, but also would reconstruct the songs to make them fit with the show, put together an incredible band. She had, really good host of players up from Canada and the U.S. both, and yeah, that was great. So I toured with her that year, and then again on another tour a few years later, where it sort of dovetailed. I was back with Sheryl, but it had worked out scheduling wise.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever record with her?
With Sarah, no, I didn't.
Mm.
No, never did. When she had already made the record when I started playing with her, and she didn't make records that often then, so that was the first record in a while when I joined her to tour, and so no, that opportunity never arose.
I see. So what was the writing process like with Sheryl? Because you recorded a couple albums with her, right, or at least one.
I recorded one with her.
Come on, right?
It was Come On.
Right.
Right. And, prior to that, it was the same kind of deal. They had already finished the record when I joined on. They had finished Globe Sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that was Jeff Trott. Jeff Trott still to this day is her big collaborating songwriter. And so right after Don Henley's tour, I started working with her, recording with her for the Come On record.
I see. What's interesting is I just thought of it as we were talking, is I'm friends with, or I was friends with a guy who was brothers with the previous guitar player for Sheryl Crow. What was his
Todd
name?
Wolf.
Todd Wolf, yeah.
Yeah. Todd's great. Todd's a great guy.
Yeah, he has his own band, the Todd Wolf Band, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's out playing all the time.
Yeah, he's managed also by the same manager, right?
He had been, and I think they still work together. Yeah, Scooter
Right.
and Tom go way back. I mean, they're lifelong friends. They've been friends since high school days. I'm pretty sure.
Right, right.
So it, you know,
That's
they're
cool.
always.
That's cool. Yeah, it just popped in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, Tom and his brother. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. So that's cool. That's cool. So I know we had a question, and I highlighted it. It was regarding 65 amps and your involvement with 65 amps. If you could talk about that as well, and I'll find who asked us the question. And
Okay.
yeah, it was Scott
Yeah.
Scott MacArthur, by the way, and he owns your pony, the Stone Pony head.
The Stone Pony.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Well. And the Stone Pony was. I had gotten on this Ampeg kick at one point and was collecting Ampegs and noticed a lot of them were using 7591s. And we simply just said, I wonder, and they had a sort of unique sound. And we wondered what the 7591s would sound in place of the 6v6s in this one Soho amp that we had. And so essentially it was the Soho model converted for 7591s, and then we did some stuff to the tone stack, changed it up a little bit to fine tune it to make it sound appropriate with those tubes, and it had a nice sort of aggressive kind of sound to it. It had a different kind of sound to it than the 6v6s. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, 65 Dan, my friend Dan Bull, he started that, and then at one point, I was telling Dan, I need amps, and this was after a couple of years in with Sheryl, a few years in with Sheryl, and said, the Marshall and the Super Reverb, they're just too loud. I'm having to use attenuators on them and this and that, and I just need something that gets a better sound at a lower volume. And I had met a guy here, it's killing. Oh yeah, Balls Amplifiers, and I wish I could remember the guy's name, but it was my first exposure to the 18-watt Marshall circuit. There was a guy in Chattanooga who made these on the side. He was a bank executive by day, and building these 18-watt Marshall clones, on the side, and he called them Balls Amplifiers. And that was the first 18-watt I heard. And it turned my head around. I said, there it is right there. That's my sound, because it was low volume and it had that kind of British Marshall kind of sound, So I was telling Dan about it. And then time went on. Dan was already living in California. He had lived in in Atlanta. He and I were close buddies here in Atlanta already. And then, ended up in LA. And so, a few months went by, and he said, oh yeah, I'm building my own 18-watt Marshall now. And then I'm like, really? I didn't know you knew how to do that stuff. And then, so he was building it. And then the next thing I know, he goes, oh yeah, I've got a guy who's giving me the money to build 5 of them and take them to the NAMM show. And I'd like you to be involved with this. Like, I'd like you to be an artist with it. And by that artist type, and by that time, I was deep into monkeying with amps and stuff like that. Nowhere near Dave's level or anything like that, but just enough to where I knew what I was looking for sound-wise. And I said, all right, now I want to be part of the process. I want to be in on this. Cut me in as a partner and I'll do it. I don't just want to be an endorsee kind of guy. I want to jump in on this. And so he gave some thought, and that's how it all started. And so he and I started it from the ground up. Initially, I sourced out finding the guys here in Atlanta to build the chassis, and
so that was the London amp, right?
Yeah, that was the London, and then
I remember the first Londons, and those were great sounding.
Man, appreciate it.
I think that was my favorite 65 amp ever, the original Londons.
The original London, yeah, and it's still, I still have mine. It's still a favorite of mine. And what we did is we figured out that that amp was obviously the 18-watt Marshall and the Watkins Dominator or the AC-15 were really similar circuits, all very similar circuits. And so we just sort of combined the AC-15 front end and an 18-watt Marshall front end, and then really beefed up the power stage and worked with Mercury Magnetics. Dan formed a relationship with those guys, and they custom made transformers. And he really went in deep on that whole end, and really, you know, trying various wines, and those guys were great. And yeah, so it was all born during that time in 2005 when all that stuff was just starting to kick up full on. I mean, there was definitely people doing it, Matchless, and who else? What's his name? Jay, the guy who had the amplifiers. It was in the DC area. It's a great guy and made great amps. Sorry, I blanked on him, but there's, there was a few out there, but yeah, we just sort of jumped in and just had fun with it and said, all right,
Cage amps? Cage?
No.
Buddha.
No.
Buddha. Yeah.
Damn. And heck, I should have started using his amps back then because they fit that bill. They were good sounding amps at a lower volume.
Yeah. The original, shoot, I don't remember what the original was called.
Yeah.
But I remember the original one. It does sound cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was the thing. And, it's funny to think about lower volume now. Back then, lower volume was 18 watts, 20 watts. Even a AC30 was becoming too loud. And so we were using, when we first built the first big batch of Londons, or I shouldn't say big, but first, 5 or so, Sheryl jumped right in. She said, I'll buy one. And so we ended up with an entire 65 backline. The other guitarist, Tim Smith, bought one. And I'll never forget those first rehearsals, which again were in Europe, using the 65 amps. And I mean, if a chord got pulled out of the guitar, they'd look at me like, Peter, what's wrong with the amp? It was all eyes on me, like.
You're like, well, I didn't need this pressure.
It was like, ooh, I didn't expect this. I wasn't planning on this end of it,
Right.
But so we went to
Buddha Twin Master. That's what it was.
Yes. Yeah, the Buddha Twin Master.
Yeah.
So yeah, we we just started the thing, went to NAMM, and and then there was a store here in Atlanta, Midtown Music. And Dave Tiller, Midtown Music, and he really helped us launch because he bought 10 of our amps. He gave us an order for 10 amps right on the spot and paid us half up front, and that gave us the money to get, to build the first batch. So we built him 10 amps. He sold those pretty quick, and we built another 10, so that's how it started.
That's cool. Hey, we just got a super chat from Rico USA. Let me see what exactly. I'm a St. Louis boy. What brought you there? How was the music scene? Also, if you could talk about how you got connected with another MO Missouri girl, Sheryl Crow. We talked about that before. I got to know her a bit in college. What a down-to-earth talent.
Yeah, what brought me to St. Louis?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't go to St. Louis to get with her. He might have been referring, but I don't know if he's referring to earlier. I went to school in St. Louis in high school.
Oh, okay.
Back in, when I was 14 and 15, so way back. I went to a prep school. So I did see a hell of a lot of great shows. So I lived in St. Louis and, I was exposed to a lot.
Where are you now?
I'm in Atlanta.
Yeah.
By the way, we got another super chat. I missed it earlier from Ben Sailors. Thank you for the super chat. What happened? He said, "What happened to 65 amps? Still using Elliott's?"
Oh, 65 is in a transition stage. I'll put it that way. Dan's doing other things at the moment. I got to the point where I just did not have the time to be engaged. And so I fell away, years back. It just didn't make sense, and I was just so busy with Sheryl. We were constantly busy, and I became her music director and yada, yada, yada. I just got where, I just wasn't tuned in, and But yeah, I'd say just say we're in sort of a I don't know, dormant stage at the moment. I'm still involved. I'll always be involved, just because Dan and I are best friends, and we started the thing, and I feel a connection to it. But it's going to come back around. We're working with some folks, and that will probably bring it back around at some point, or Dan will. But right now, he's doing IRs and things for the Helix, and working with Line 6, and coming up with some pretty incredible sounds and things in that whole world of IR for those guys. That's where
unfucking believable as a question. So pedal boards from artist to artist, gig to gig. What have you used over the years? What
pedal boards?
Yeah, he just wanted to know kind of what you've used over the years.
I've always built my own pedal boards, just threw together pedals or whatever, and made my own boards or whatever. And then I used a Bradshaw rig for a while, and that was great. And then when I wanted to go back to a board, then again went back to assembling my own. And since then, I've been just building them on, what do you call them? What's the big pedal board company? Damn.
Pedal train.
Yeah, sorry, I just blanked. It must be that Cabernet. Sorry, y'all. That's
okay.
Yeah,
we understand this scenario.
Cheers.
Drinking on air has occasionally gotten out of hand in our cast, depending on how many hours it has gone.
I was gonna say I'll keep my memory here. So
yeah. No, it's definitely, unfortunately, got out of hand a few times.
Yeah,
but people generally love those shows.
Well, they're
a bunch of guys face down drunk on live chat.
Well, if I get the purple teeth after a while, I've had my fill. So. Now I'll put it this way: as far as the pedal boards, there's the big thing for me with the pedal board is the gig rig, programmable thing. That's great. Thing kills. I've been using that for lost count of the years, 5 years or so, 7 years, and along with that, I guess 7 or 8 years, and then always on a pedal train. And lately, the True Tones, power supplies.
Yeah, those are great too.
They're great. The gig rig is powered by his whole setup. So I have multiple boards. So the gig rig, he's got his whole power mesh underneath there, underneath the board, and it's great. That board has never gone down once. And and then the other ones that I build again using the True Tones and everything. It's like I never can keep. I have 2 or 3 boards that never remain the same. What's great about it is just being able to go, for whatever, a session or somebody I go play with, I'll just assemble a board real quick. And off you go. I'd much rather have it that way. I can never stay with just one board.
Well, you love gear. You're a big gear person, right? So
I love gear too.
I love gear. I love gear.
I love old gear.
Yeah, old gear.
Well, I guess I make gear too, so I love that too.
But great gear.
But I have a love. I honestly find myself occasionally going on Reverb and just scrolling amps and scroll, or pedals even, because on Reverb, you can search by year and era, So, 70s amps, 60s amps. What's there? What do they got? And sometimes I just do it to look at the pictures. To be honest, I just want to see what someone's selling and how much it's selling for, and sometimes I'll be like, yeah, no, but wow, that's a cool amp.
Yeah. Dave, you have a problem, and understand, and I'm with you. Occasionally,
though, I've succumbed to that shopping and have It's like, hopefully I hadn't been drinking, because then you really succumb to the,
That's when you get a
that's
package at
shopping.
you get a package at the door, and you're like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
Right.
I remember I was on there once, and I was looking at like high watts and things, and I found a high watt PA head.
Oh wow!
Right, and it has like a little insert point, which is just a passive loop, so you could use it as a power amp in or something, and multiple channels, and it looks cool as hell. If you look up a high watt PA head, you'd be like, oh man, that looks cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, click. Click. $1,700 later.
But, yeah.
What year is that
That's
from?
a problem.
Early 70s. Oh my god, it looks so cool. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it does. It just looks cool.
It looks good.
But it actually sounds. We compared it to a DR103, and it's very similar. It's just slightly less gain. Very similar in tone, though. We compared it in the studio with an amp switcher where we could really tell. And super cool amp. It just looks so cool. You got to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Have you?
What I really wanted was a 50 watt high watt.
Oh man, that's
but
what
I didn't want to pay $2,900 for it when I remember when they were $700, and I'm like, jeez, yeah. But I'm still looking for a 50 watt high watt at a good price. So yeah, hey people,
yeah, good prices.
Hook me up.
Yeah, if you can get a good price.
It's funny. I mention stuff on this show. Sometimes people hook me up. It's interesting. I mentioned I really wanted an espresso maker, and some guy goes, "I got an extra one. I'll send it to you. Give me your address." And I'm like, "Okay."
That's excellent.
Yeah, it has.
And then I mentioned like some H&H power amps, and someone recently said, "Hey, I have these two things, and these kind of monoblock H&H power amps," and I'm like, "You can have them. All you get, just pay for the shipping." I'm like, all right, I'll send you a label.
Wow.
Wow. That's
I
cool.
don't know why I really needed them, but at that point, for the $80 it cost, yeah, okay, I'll take them.
Well, maybe I'll buy one. I need a power amp.
You pick up
it's just a mono. There's two mono power amps. It's like small.
I got you.
But it's good for a wet dry thing or something like that. It's killer for that.
Yeah.
That's cool. What were you going to say, Peter?
I would say, have you heard of Roost amps?
Yeah, sure.
I've got a Roost. And
I've heard of that.
And it was, because I had a high watt DR103 at one point.
Yeah.
It was great. It was a 71. It was.
Oh, yeah, good stuff.
Prompt period, great, super clean amp. And then we were over in the UK, and I got to know some folks over there, and somebody over there turned me on to a Roost. And here, I'll see if I can disconnect here without killing the sound. If I do, I'll actually, let me be prepared to correct a problem.
This might be a train wreck here, people.
Yeah, right. May have a train wreck, but I will show you.
But it's okay.
It's all right.
If you're going to show amps, we're okay with the train wreck.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll show you the Roost here. Because you don't see them much at all anymore. But here we go. Let me jump off of here. Oh, yeah, we're fine. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. We're good.
Yep. We can hear you.
Right. There's the Roost.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. Oh, wait. What's that park?
Oh, yeah, that.
Oh, I know what that is.
That's the Mac Daddy. Yeah, Park 75.
Oh, yeah. And then Park 75, which really is a 50 watt, but just with bigger tubes.
Right, with KT77 or
yeah,
KT88s. I mean,
yeah. The funny thing about Park 75 that I didn't really know until I started working on a few of them for friends, it literally was just a 50 watt that they put bigger tubes in.
Exactly. That's it.
And then some of the components were ever so slightly different, but you could convert it to be whatever. That's a cool Park cabinet too, man. That's awesome.
Man, they didn't come together. The head I bought here in Atlanta at a Guitar Center, which I couldn't believe.
They just look so cool.
Wow, the Guitar Center.
Yeah,
That's surprising.
it does. Yeah, it's a 72. It's a PA head actually, or it has a PA designation on it.
Uh-huh.
But the circuit on it is just one one resistor away from being a bass head.
Yeah.
A bass 50. And then here's a 72, Marshall bass 50.
Yeah.
And
what's the fawn one over there?
Let's see, that fawn one. This one I got
early 70s 50 or something.
That is a 70 head, 69 or 70 that have been retold.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we bought that. Dan bought that actually from Rick of Celestian.
Oh yeah.
He owned that amp, and then he sold it to Dan.
Oh, and you got a Laney PA head.
Yeah, I got the Laney PA. I got that just last year. That thing sounds awesome.
That one's cool.
But that Roos, too, I was going to tell you, that Roos has partridge transformers. It sounds like a hot-rodded high watt. It's really
cool.
Amp.
Yeah, those are great. All of those are great.
And then let's see, the other favorite British amp that wasn't very popular in the days.
Oh, yeah. Selmer.
Oh, Selmer. Wow.
The Selmer treble and bass with a 50. That thing sounds great.
Yeah, the funny thing about Selmers right now, Selmers are really soft in the market, so you can pick up a Selmer for nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, like, literally nothing. Like, you can get a crocodile, the croc heads.
Right.
For like $1,200 or something.
Yeah, and those are the most desirable. But if anybody wants, you can buy these right now for about $700 to $800.
Yeah.
And it's the exact same circuit.
Yeah, those are super cool.
And anybody watching the show, if you want a great sounding amp, just dial one of those up. Try to get you one of those.
Super cool.
Really, they have all the voltage settings. Some of the earlier Selmers don't.
Yeah.
But that one's got taps on the transformer, and
love that. Love it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Vintage amp tour.
Yeah, I love it. That was fantastic. Thanks for taking us on the tour.
I love it.
I'm just like you guys.
I'll eventually have to do the tour, but I don't have all of them here right now. So
yeah,
you should do that.
I will have them all here eventually.
Yeah, well, what you have in the back looks good. So it's fun.
Oh yeah, I have a 68 50-watt Marshall and then a 70 or 71 Jose modded.
Oh wow,
100-watt Marshall.
Wow.
Also kind of rare and really expensive.
Yeah, does it have
I got a good price on it, but it's expensive if I were to sell it.
Oh yeah. Well, what'd you ask, Peter?
Does it have any provenance? Does it have any known player on that amp?
Not known player, but no known player that I know of, at least. But it came up in recent times, in the last couple of years, maybe the last year it came up, and someone hipped me to it. It was on Craigslist.
Yeah,
and someone hipped me to it.
Wow.
And I'm like going, wait, it's how much? Wait, hook me up.
Man.
By no means did I need to buy it at the time, but I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to disclose the price, but it was a really good price for the amp.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I have to. I don't have. I know what it's worth, and it's a great investment. So,
Yeah.
it was it was under $2,000. So,
well, if you go to sell it,
it's probably worth $5,000 or higher.
Yeah.
So.
Now, are there ways to tell if there's a fake Jose modded? I'm curious.
Well, I know instantly by saying it, and by no means is this fake.
Right.
Yes, there's total ways to tell. I've been in like 20 to 25 of these amps. I know the parts he used. I know the kind of parts. I know the kind of shielded wire that he used throughout his career. And it's blue. And if it has this blue shielded wire, for sure it's Jose. And there's some other telltale signs. You can't fake it because you can't get those parts anymore.
Right. Interesting.
The push pull pots and some of the stuff he used, you can't buy anymore. Nowhere, nothing. They were probably old radio parts at the time, and they were probably from the 50s at the time, and he was using them in the 80s. They just don't exist anymore. So
interesting.
I mean, not that you can't replicate the circuit now. You can, but you can't do it the same way with the same parts.
Right. So, question for you, Peter. What about new gear?
New gear.
Are you do you like new gear? You buy new gear, pedals, that kind of stuff?
I go crazy on pedals, or lately, especially since we're in lockdown.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're
just perusing reverb.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, it's like no, it's more about on Instagram. I've become hip to these, call them rogue pedal builders that are on Instagram, and I've come across a couple of really great builders. In fact, I got a couple today that came in that I'll be blasting through after we get done, from this builder Mark Leahy that is on Instagram as Make Sounds Loudly, and he knows how to make a really great clone sounding pedal using old parts. So these, and then let's see, there's this other guy. Chris Vincent. I recently bought a pedal that Brian Ray hipped me to.
We love Brian.
He's in L.A. Chris is in L.A. And he's making, this is one of his Range Master circuit clones, but, we had made one too with 65 amps, but, this one has a 6-way tone switch where it's, so he's taken it a step further with a 6-way, with the different capacitors for different, hit mid-range notches. And also the bias control is on the face. There's all parts in this are from the 60s, which is, so these guys are, they're nuts into it.
Right.
That's awesome.
And it's a great sound pedal. So yeah, this kind of stuff I'm totally into. So as far as, there's a few new guitars too in the same boat. Elliott guitars. I got a new Elliott Strat. Yeah, it goes on. So yeah, I am not averse to new stuff. Amps, I tend to prefer older stuff. Somebody had asked earlier as far as 65 amps and the Elliott amps. Yes, I've got an Elliott amp that he made that is sort of a 5E3 circuit version kind of amp that he made is really good. What else? I don't know. I think that's about it on new stuff.
That's cool.
Amps, I haven't really bought any amps. I'm sort of done. I bought so many amps during the 65 amps period under the guise of R&D and and then just and I have too many. I'm starting to shed some of them, but then I look at them in that whole area that I was just showing you, and I go, why get rid of them now? There'll be a time when I want to get rid of them because, especially now, lately I've been upgrading my recording setup. So I bought a UA Apollo interface and the aux and things like that, so I can really improve my home recording. And now that I have the aux, I can use all my 100-watt amps and 50 watters.
Rank them.
Yeah, the aux is great, isn't it? It's a great.
Yeah.
It's a really. Yeah. I've got one sitting right here. Yeah, it's great.
Great.
Especially for the big amps, it works really, really well.
Hey, we have a super chat from Rhett Scholl.
Oh,
And Lana checking in here.
Oh, yeah.
You know Rhett?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Hey, Peter, I'd love to hear how the Tone Master came to be. Big fan of the show, guys.
oh, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Rhett.
Well,
Rhett, how are you?
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
I'll show you two. Well, here is one of the first ones.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Nice.
And yeah, jazz master kind of thing. And then it was followed up by this one was another where we did this two-tone kind of paint job kind of deal.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
it's like a cut-off bridge sort of style,
Yeah.
high mass cut-off bridge sort of thing.
Yeah, so I met Andy Elliott through Ken Hoover of Zion Guitars.
Oh, I remember Zion.
That's his soul. Ken's no longer with us, but he was from Greensboro. Ken was, and where I grew up, I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina, and so Ken introduced me to Andy Elliott, and Andy is a builder that's in the Hickory, or just outside of Hickory in Hiddenite, North Carolina, up in the hills, the foothills, and he said he wanted to build me a guitar, and he built on the Fender kind of thing, Strats and so forth, and wanted to do a signature thing. And I said, well, and at that time I was like, there's enough Strats out there. Why don't we do something different? Why don't we do something with the Jaguar kind of thing? And so it was like, all right, I want a Jaguar, but let's make the Jazz Master pickups, but constructed like P90s. And then do it with a bridge where it strings through the back, not the whammy bar. And I want it with a large headstock. I just said, this is what I want done to it and so forth. And let's try that. And then Andy is such an impeccable builder. He had built acoustic guitars before that, and he tunes the wood, and he builds them entirely from scratch. He even cuts the pick guards from scratch, everything. And he worked with Lindy Fralin on, they had to invest heavily in the pickups because a Jazz Master and a P90 are two different builds. The magnets are underneath on a P90, with metal screws, where a Jazz Master pickup are, studs, stud magnets. And so, they had to totally retool for that. It was quite an investment for them. And so actually had gotten on the phone with Lindy during that time, which was really great and amazing, and talked about what we were going for sonically. And that guitar, that first red one, both of them, the red one and the white one, are just these spooky, amazing sounding, playing, bigger than life guitars. There's just something about them. And, I feel like we can sort of claim we were sort of, I would dare say that was the first Jazz Master to come out as an offering with a P90 style pickup. I'm sure people had dropped P90s in them, but definitely the first where it was a Jazz Master pickup that functioned like a P90, that was constructed like a P90, without doubt, without question. That was the one that he and Lindy tooled up to build, was the very first. And
love Lindy.
Yeah, I was going to say, Lindy makes amazing stuff.
Lindy makes great everything.
Yeah, he does. He makes great.
It doesn't matter. It comes from Lindy. Well, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. And so now, and it's gone on. And so Andy now he wants his own pickups and everything. And they made the deal initially, I think, where, with the investment they had going into it, that Lindy could sell the pickups as well on his own. And so you can get those pickups. You can get them from Lindy. Yeah.
Awesome.
That was how that guitar came to be. And it's a great guitar. I go through phases. Lately, I've been back to using my vintage guitars and stuff, but then I'll pull out, like I did the Sarah McLaughlin tour using the Elliott's, and I use Elliott's Tele guitars on tour with Sheryl. And
What are your thoughts?
You got to mix it up.
Yeah, totally.
What are your thoughts on
Fun.
relicking or aging of guitars? Do you like that, or do you like natural, just to let that happen naturally, or are you kind of cool with it?
Personally, I think I'm totally cool with it, and I think it's a work of art. It's a way, it's sort of a art process in its own right, So I'm totally fine with it. But with my own guitars, I personally like letting them age on their own. I have yet to buy a relic guitar that I'm aware of that I can remember. But usually, when I've had the Gibson custom shop build them for me, or or I've bought them from Fender, I just get them and
Get them new.
get them new and let them get road worn on their own. Believe me, they get road worn pretty quickly.
I was going to say.
No matter how much you try to take care of them,
Yeah.
they get beat up.
Yeah. By the way, Red Shell, thanks, man, for the question. Appreciate that. And the super
Thanks
chat.
for Red. Thanks for the super chat, though.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
We would have answered your question anyway.
Yeah. But thank you. That was really
But
nice.
thank you. Yeah.
So, Peter, what are your thoughts about Kempers and things like that?
I don't have a problem with them. At the same time, the jury's still out as far as I'm concerned. I'm so picky about that kind of thing. And there's, the Kempers definitely serve their purpose, but when I've heard the Kempers in a live context, they just sound like you're looking at a picture on the wall. They just sound flat. They don't have that dimension that you get from an amp. And the thing I've always felt is that it's not just the electric guitar. I hate it when the amps have to be off stage and all that kind of thing, because you feel like your feet are cut off at the ankles. Because
disconnected.
Yeah, because the amp is so much of the part of the tone of the electric guitar. You can't have one without the other. So if the amp's off stage, and you're just relying on your ears, then it feels really tense. You don't have the feel. You don't have the interaction of even just the slightest amount of feedback or whatever.
Especially, I imagine, with the kind of music that you're playing with Sheryl and stuff, it's like that vintage sort of amp interaction is
important.
What it's about, really. I mean,
totally.
I especially the sort of music that you're playing is especially something that I think modelers do poorly.
Right.
I don't. The in-betweens are not.
The in-betweens. That's the big thing.
The in-betweens. Like if there's a guy that plays heavy music or something through a modeler, it does it pretty well. But the Americana style music is just about that gritty old amp, man, and the gritty old guitar, and that's just where it's at. That's the mojo. That's the thing.
Yeah, personality of the tone, and then also rolling back the volume on the guitar.
Yeah, it doesn't react the same way.
And that's what's great about these kind of pedals. That's the thing also with fuzz boxes and so forth. A lot of people don't recognize is that it's not just the balls out fuzz tone. Is when you roll the guitar volume, the clean sounds you get out of these things.
Yes. Yeah.
That was what back in the day. They were using these because the amps, like the early Marshalls and stuff were sort of like that. They would use these pedals that were treble boosters.
Yeah, treble boosters and boost into the old Marshall that was muddy and made this great sound, But then roll off the volume knob and it was pristine clean.
And you'd probably find, like, you watch those old those old videos of Deep Purple, and you see Ritchie Blackmore. There's one of them doing the song No, No, No. And he used, something Keynes, or I forget. There was some sort of box that he used. It was the same kind of deal. It was one of those same kind of circuits.
Yeah.
But his volume was on 5 most of the time on the guitar, and then he'd crank it up, you'd hear it and it'd sound like a roar. And the same with Hendrix. Watch, a
lot of those guys,
that fuzz face would stay on, and he would just roll the volume back on the Strat, and you'd get that crystalline sound. Then when he'd crank up, it just sounded like a bomb going off.
Wall of like the fuzz face especially.
Yeah, and so even in our world, using the smaller amps and stuff, I usually play with the volume way back, and that way I can just turn the guitar up to 10 when it's time to solo.
Well, it's dynamics. It's you can vary your volume depending on what. I mean, you roll it off and it's clean, and then maybe, hey, the verse is a little more gritty, so pull it up a little more, and then the chorus is bam, open, or the lead is open.
Yeah. So, and
that's an old school guitar player.
Right, and
coming from a guy that you're coming from a person that played a vintage amp, that was one channel, and you use your volume knob and your pedals to get everything.
Yeah,
and there's a lot to be said for that, because I think a lot of that is lost today, and kids don't know what that is. They don't understand that at all.
Yeah. Well, and modeling doesn't really, and I don't want to slide it because I don't know. I haven't used a Kemper, so don't quote anybody who has a Kemper could chime in.
But I have one, and it does have some dynamics where you can roll back the volume and it'll clean up, but not
really, not like the amp behind you, Mark.
No, definitely not. No, the amp behind me.
It serves
not that one. The one in the
Plexi. Oh, the Plexi. Yeah, exactly. The Plexi next to me also. Yeah, definitely. You roll off the volume and it's much better than the Kemper. There's no doubt about it. But it does have, the Kemper has some merits.
That's the thing. And the Helix, the new Line 6 Helix, I just actually downloaded the Helix Native, and I'm really looking forward to working with that. I haven't had a chance to dive into it yet. But I've been hearing really good things about that. It's like that technology is improving. So it's not like going to be a stickler about it and say, there's no place for that technology here. I'm going to use the hell with you guys. It's more like it's just it serves
a tool.
It's beautifully. It's great, but I prefer the old ones. That's, to me, that whole interaction. It's like I said, an amp and a guitar.
The tubes,
Well, not to mention just the interaction on stage with a live cabinet and the guitar, and what you will get from that, which will be feedback, if you want it to be, depending on what kind of amount of drive you're plowing through it.
Yeah.
And that feedback and that excitement is what, to me, makes rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean,
part of it.
I remember some friends of mine are in the band. I'm from Detroit originally, right? So there's a band, Sponge, from the 90s, and they're friends of mine, Vinny and Andy and a few other people in the band. And I saw them literally before this lockdown. They played, I saw 2 shows in LA. That they were playing, just because I was loaning them some amps, and I just why not? Let's go. But this was literally right on the border of maybe should I go? Should I not go? I'm not so sure if I should go. But I went to the 2 shows. I survived.
You're still here.
Although the shows were poorly attended because of this, what was just starting to happen with the coronavirus. But the 2 shows, what struck me, and I was really watching it, it was their use of feedback with their music, just rock and roll, crunchy guitars, and letting the feedback happen because there was a certain volume, and they would use the feedback as this tension in the music, and man, that's how it's done.
Yeah.
That's how it's done, man. That's the classic rock and roll thing, and so many bands have lost that, and it's a bit depressing. But watching them, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome, because it creates this excitement and tension, regardless of the song. It creates this excitement and tension to everything that.
There's in the later. And more the current generation of bands, they haven't experienced that. They haven't seen many bands, if any, that do that. And, it's more about it's a very controlled environment. It's the time where in-ears and front of house requires your stage volume, even in a club, to be at a minimum.
I think that's bullshit too, but
oh, totally, I do too.
It's total bullshit because so I remember this distinctly. So it depends on who you are. It all depends on who you are and who you play for. Because I remember distinctly at the Viper Room, friends of mine that play there all the time, and they're always like, they make me turn down so I can't almost hear my amp. It's not even on.
Yeah.
It's like so low that it's not on.
And that's the Viper.
But meanwhile, another time, Steve Stevens did a show where he came in with an all-star cast, and his amp, one of my amps, was on like 6. That's a 100-watt amp on like 6. That's 10. That's on 10. There's no more volume to be had after 6. It's just distortion. So, oh wait. So this club allows them to play at that volume, but not the average Joe. Oh, and by the way, we could still hear all the vocals.
Yeah.
Just fine.
Right.
So I say hogwash.
Oh, totally. I would go into clubs back and would still, whenever I plan on eventually get out doing some stuff, but
so does everyone.
Yeah. And, but it would be like, I would go, no. What comes off the stage, all I'm asking you to do is accentuate what comes off the stage. Focus on getting the drums. Focus on getting the vocals. If you need to goose a lead here and there, great. If you don't worry about it. I'll handle it just fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, it's all one. It's supposed to be this one big thing. It's like, I don't want a front of house guy who I have no relation to. Maybe he's great, but in a club, whatever, he doesn't know the music or anything, being in control, being the god of the music we're putting out,
Well, I always say it's like, so like you just said, you have a drummer. He's playing at this velocity and this volume. So then you match up the bass and the guitars to that same relative volume as the drums. So it's nice and balanced. If you're walking around the stage, it seems like a good volume. I'm not saying it has to be excruciatingly loud. A relatively good volume where everything's balanced.
Well, it's got to compete
then
with
just
the drums.
amplify that for the front of house people.
It's got to compete with the drums. I mean, how bad is it when the drums are louder than everybody else?
Oh my God, I can't even count how many times that this has happened in recent years. Bass and drums and vocals are fucking way out front, but guitars are buried.
Oh, you don't hear crap. Yeah, and it's just because they didn't have it EQ'd properly or whatever the case may be. And they're missing the point. I mean, especially if you're lucky to be in a good sounding room. The whole idea is all of it. You're getting everything that's coming off the stage, and that doesn't mean you have to use 100 watters or anything.
No,
but 30, 50 watters, and it's a rock band. Hello,
that's I know. And it's proven time and time again. I mean, because like I saw the band Sponge. They're using 50 watters, and they got them at a reasonable volume, not excruciating, but a reasonable volume, enough to get feedback from the amp, like cabinets on stage. And I talked to the singer Vinny, and he's like, "Oh no, I love loud guitars on stage. I got to have some guitars, otherwise it just doesn't seem right. It's not right, And
I'm hearing a story. Reeves Gabrels told me a story one time. During his time playing with David Bowie, that he said Bowie totally got it. That I think he had a personal experience where sound man had come up to them on stage during the rehearsals, at the beginning of the tour or whatever, just said stage volume's too loud, Reeves amps need to come down, and this and that. And David said no, let their volume.
Sound guy went away.
Their volume to be. and you work with that. Look where David came from, playing with Mick Ronson, who was using
Right.
that big,
Right.
that 200 watt,
Excruciating loud.
with two tubes pulled out.
I'm gonna run for a second. I'll be right back.
Okay,
Sure.
Bathroom call.
that that's case in point of rock and roll is rock and roll. Obviously it's all depends on the type of music and all that. Like in Cheryl's world, what we do is we have our amps on stage, but we do have plexiglass in front of them, but I can still interact with the amp. And then we take these, SE is the brand, that they have these isolators that go over the microphone, and it keeps the sound from reflecting off of the plexiglass and causing phasing problems.
I was going to ask how you work around that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's how we do it, because it's the worst. I hated plexiglass before that. Obviously it'd be great to have it to where the amp is open, but it doesn't always work in that context, depending on what you're playing, and that's fine. But at least Audley and I can use our amps, whatever we want, have the plexi, have the isolators there, and maintain a good stage volume, but still have interaction with our amplifiers.
Right. All right.
That's how we're able to, and he and I use, like I'm using 20 watt amps, 15 to 20 watt amp. And so is he. I think he may even have for clean, I think he's got a 30 or 40 watt up there of some sort. He fluctuates a bit, but usually we're using 15, 20 watt amps.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's good that you guys, I mean, that's the thing that I love about the Sheryl Crow band and, the sound of the music. It's this organic, natural, made with real guitars and amps, and, it's real rock, so, hey, we got a question from Stuart Rose. He says, can Dave please ask about the Whiskey and/or 65 amps Whiskey collaboration with Dan, if you haven't already?
Yeah. Well, and the Whiskey is, unfortunately the amp I've had the least experience with, because that was after I had sort of not parted ways, but just became less involved. I was so busy on the road and everything. So that's totally Dan's baby, is the Whiskey. In fact, Dave, you probably know more about that amp than I do, because I know that.
I mean, I was approached with doing it in collaboration. Essentially, the dirty channel of that amp was my baby, and the clean channel of that amp was more of something Dan wanted to try. It's a super cool amplifier. It's kind of in the JTM 45-ish vein, with a gain and a master, so you can get more gain than a JTM 45 would have, but you can also back it off, and but you do have a master, so it's basically, just a collaboration, man. It was just it was a collaboration. It was a cool sounding amp.
I totally blanked that you were integral in that. Yeah, that you.
Yeah. I basically did the whole thing. It's I have nothing. I love how that amp sounds. So
yeah, especially I really like the EL84 version.
Yeah, that was cool. God, I haven't heard one of those in a while. But yeah, that was super cool.
So we got a great question from Sean Tubbs. How are you, Sean?
Hey, Sean.
He says, Peter's rhythm guitar pocket is just so amazing. What's the deal? How'd that happen? Spill it, man.
Oh man, well, thank you, Sean. Thank you. I'm not sure how to answer that. I think it was just, I don't know. It was like I was talking about earlier. It was, fortunate enough to play with these great bands and great drummers. My first experience of having to pay attention to pocket, I'll put it this way. Obviously you pay attention to pocket, or at least you think you are, earlier on. But when I joined Pete Droge, my first gig with Pete, I never rehearsed with Pete. I had my first gig was at a festival in Germany, and they called me the week before. His producer Brendan O'Brien called me the week before, said, "Hey, his guitarist, who was Jeff Trott, is not going out with him. Decided not to go out, and they're going to Europe in a week. Yeah,
Oh boy,
do you have a passport?"
you have a passport.
And I got the gig because I had a passport. Essentially, is what it was.
Oh man,
so I'm
thrown into the fire.
Thrown in, learned from tapes, no rehearsals, flew out there. I actually went. I went to Disney World. We took our nephew to Disney World that week, and so while they were out touring, my wife and our nephew were touring Disney World. I was in the room learning Droge's songs from cassette tapes. Flew to Germany, did that show, and I had just come out of playing with my own band at home. I had two bands at the time. My own was this instrumental band, and it was high energy, just running on 10, ahead of the beat all the time. Pete Droge's music was like a mile behind the beat kind of stuff, And so here we are on stage in Germany in front of 40,000 people or whatever, and the first song kicks in, and I was a mile ahead of the band, between nerves and everything. And it was like, holy shit, I have never experienced a drummer who at that time was Dan McCarroll, who had such a deep backbeat and pocket. It was amazing. I was like, and it was just like putting the brakes on, And then it's like, oh my God, I don't want these guys to think I can't play in the groove with them, So I had to really then concentrate on finding his pocket, So Droge, everything about Droge was that way. The music was really just laid back and deep and everything. And then Sheryl's music's the very same way. And so it's playing, I can say it's playing with these incredible drummers that were that kind of drummer, that were so backbeat and just where you had to find your place.
Right. No, that's awesome.
Yeah exactly the feel. Yep.
Sean's right. By the way, how you doing on time, Peter? You doing all right?
Hey man, I don't want to hold you guys up. I see we're at it a while, or I don't want to bore anybody out there, but I'm fine. I'm good.
Okay, no, we still have a few questions. If you're good for some time, just let us know. Stephen Douglas says, for Dave, any thoughts on a Soldano hot mod or for Marshalls?
No.
No?
Not really. No. I mean, there's too many logistics to that. It's not so cut and dry. So.
Okay.
Was that his own circuit, so to speak, the hot mod you're saying?
Well, the original Soldano years ago came out with a hot mod that you could plug into like a JCM 800 or something, and get this kind of modified Marshall kind of thing.
It just plugged into the tube
super
stage.
Cool, but there's too many variables these days with amps and on what you're gonna get, and I'm not gonna do something like that. It's just, it's not.
And there's already one out. There's a guy who.
Yeah, there is.
There's a guy who's doing it right now. I forget what it's called, but you can get it. I actually have it for my 2204.
Yeah.
And it sounds great. What's that?
Buy that.
Buy that. Yeah.
I'd like to have complete control over what I put out there. So it's like, if you plug it into a different amp or no, it seems like a headache to me. No.
Yeah, I get it.
I would imagine. You've got your own sort of sound and expectations and sauce.
Exactly.
You just know what it is you're going for.
And I like interacting with people. Like if I'm modifying something for someone, I like interacting with people where they're sort of telling me what they want to achieve, and what kind of sounds they want to achieve, and then I can kind of tailor the end product to that. That's really important because, if you're a classic rock guy, I'm not going to do the same thing I do for like a guy that's into metal. Like, it's just not the same thing. So, you got to tell me what you want. Tell me what you're into, what your influence is, what your vibe, what you're looking for. What you have and isn't working for you.
Yeah.
Yep. Question from Martin Sutcliffe. Peter, any tricks or boxes for getting the AC side of the London into top boost territory?
It is a top boost on the. No, it's not exactly.
No, it was more the AC-15 kind of thing. Is what we did, and we did like the color switch on it. The color tone knob was, different mid-range points that we, or it was more of a low-end roll-off is what it was.
Yeah.
Went from more of the original vintage kind of setting that sounded very Beatle-esque to adding a little more low end with each setting that you went to. So I can't really answer that because Dave could probably answer that better than I could.
Well, wasn't one side an EF86 side and one side was more of a top boost side? Didn't have the. I don't remember this exactly, so that's why I'm asking. Wasn't the other side a volume with the EQ?
Yeah, like the one side that we had, like the 18-watt Marshall side, and that was volume, EQ, and tremolo, just like the 18-watt circuit.
Mm-hmm.
So it had volume, tone knob, and tremolo.
Okay, yeah.
And
so that's really not like a top boost at all. So
right, and the AC.
So you're not going to get a top boost. So no.
No, because of the EF86. I mean, maybe you could put it close to the very first AC30s that had an EF86 on the input stage, but I'm sure that was a little bit different too. It definitely.
Yeah. It's not really a top boost circuit. So
yeah,
like on a matchless DC30 or something, the one channel, not the EF86 channel, the one channel is a top boost circuit essentially. So it's it's got the bass and treble and mid, if I recall. It's been a while, and a volume, and that would be a standard top boost circuit.
It's something to think that top boost was probably them trying to answer to the fact that people were coming out with treble boost pedals and things like that.
Well, top boost really all it was the EQ. So essentially, a Vox signal path wise is a Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
The EQ points are a little different, but the architecture is the same. It's a gain stage, it's a cathode follower, and then the power section. It's exactly the same makeup. It's just that the EQ is a little different. It's got a 50 picofarad treble EQ, and it's got a couple different pot values and a few different values throughout the preamp. But essentially, the architecture is a Marshall or a Bassman. It started with a Bassman, then it went to a Marshall, then it went to the Vox. So it's really the architecture or the blueprint of the signal path is the same in all those amps. It's just some choices of parts. So, I mean, in a lot of respects, a cranked up top boost Vox, a real original Vox, sounds a lot like a Marshall. So, which sounds a lot like a 410 Bassman.
Yeah, and a lot of guys use a lot of guys in those days would use AC30s in that context. Like a lot of people probably don't realize that Richie Blackmore used an AC30 on the Machine Head record quite a bit.
Yeah, and Jimmy Page used an AC30 throughout his career too, a bunch.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean I have one. I mean, I'll maybe one day I'll make a video where I'll show the difference. I mean, I have a copper top boost AC30, and I can do it with an amp switcher into the same cabinet and show the difference between my 50-watt Marshall. And it's not going to be that much. It's not that much different.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah.
I'd hear
Yeah,
that.
it can be super aggressive. It's interesting.
That's fun. That's cool. Martin Addison has a comment. He said, "You were right. I saw Mike Campbell at the Viper Room, and they were full volume."
Yeah, yeah, man. No, it just depends on the artist, man. If it's a big artist, they won't say shit. That's the way it is. That's the way it works.
Yeah,
that's the way it works. And I don't believe a friend of mine who is a friend of mine we've had on the show before, Tom Abraham. He's a award-winning sound front house guy. He's worked with Keith Urban. He's worked with Alice in Chains. He's worked with Garbage. He's an amazing, probably one of the best sound guys I know, period. And he goes, I don't care. It's whatever everyone's comfortable with on stage. He goes, I can work with whatever you're comfortable with on stage. Mm-hmm. If that means it's a 100-watt amp on 10, that's fine. I'll work with it.
Yeah.
And I can make that work out front. It's not an issue. And he's dealt with some people that have literally tested that, and that I've seen before, and where their little area of guitar land is the living volume hell over there, and I mean it would like literally deafen you. But out front, everything is heard equally. It can be done.
Oh, it can be done, yeah.
It can be done.
Right.
Maybe it's a slight bit more work for the front of house guy, but it can be done. There's a balance.
Well, I certainly hope it goes back at some point to amps on stage and enough of this.
It still exists, man. It still exists. When I was over the summer, this last summer, I was at a festival, Louder Than Life festival in Louisville. And I was seeing all the bands that were playing, and they had amps on stage, man.
Oh, good.
I mean, I didn't see one modeler the whole day.
Well,
and it was all real amps on stage. Some of them were rented, obviously, but it was all real amps on stage, and they were playing them live. And imagine that. Jeez. It was a rock festival, of course, but, hey.
Yeah. Here's the thing too about the live or the loud volume too, and the amps and the Marshalls and so forth. In recent years, I've done some shows with Driving and Crying, a band that's from here out of Atlanta, and the gig called for a 50-watt Marshall half stack, and I would bring that out, and the big thing when you use that, it's all about dialing in the tone, and it's just making sure it doesn't sound shrill.
Yeah,
it sounds fat and big. And when you play like that amp, I would use a late 70s 50-watt master volume head into a basket weave 412, and so the basket weave would, it would use off some of the high end a little bit perfectly, and you just make sure that you didn't have too much treble dial in. And when you're playing at that volume, like I was playing pretty much the thing full on, and you ride the volume on the guitar. And it's
basically, if your tones are together, the sound guy complains way less.
Exactly. And he can, I'm following Kevin Kenny, the singer, and you got to really bring the volume down at really gentle parts. And then there's parts when it goes to where it's on 10 and it roar, and so you're every bit as much a part of it as the guy out front.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was the same deal. I even had Kevin ask me to turn up one night, and already had the amp up to where all I could do was really just angle the cabinet more towards him. Yeah. And then, beyond that, the front of house guy, Chris, he was fine with whatever you gave him. The very same thing. He said, I don't care. It sounds great out here.
Yeah. 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 That's a good sound guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, we,
yeah. If your sounds are together and it sounds great on stage, the sound guy will go, "Wow, that sounds amazing." Okay, great.
And if you're playing really loud on stage, as long as you know dynamics, if you know just the whoa, I'm supposed to back off here, that's all you got to do. It's really simple. It really makes you. And when you listen back to those guys back in the day, Hendrix and everybody that were using the 100-watt stacks, that's what they were doing. They were dropping back to, rolling the guitar back to 2 or 3 if they needed to.
Yep. It seems to be a lost art.
It's lost art for sure.
Rusty Milner, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate that. We had a question from Rhett Shull. Peter, after buying the aux, do you think you'll start to use it live?
I'm not sure. I haven't really thought about that. I could. I doubt it. Just because of the way we're set up, we can still use just amps the way they are. But it could be helpful. I could see it possibly being helpful to the guy out front, gives him another sound, but I don't know. We've sort of got it. We've got it drilled down as it is. We've sort of got our routine down, and I was actually prepared. I was actually set to bring out a Marshall on this next run. That's a Silver Jubilee, one of the smaller 2550s. That I bought recently, and it gets a really good sound at a lower volume, and plan on A-Bing it with a Ampeg that I have, a GU12.
Oh, cool.
It's a really good clean sound. And between those two, you get I've got everything. It's there, but I could totally see the aux working. I know other people that use the aux in a live situation, and I would probably dare say that would be more along. It might serve me better. I'll put it that way than the Kemper, because you're still using a real amplifier, and you can get all the control of the amplifier, especially with the volume knob, and still push a cabinet with it. It's got a speaker out, so you can run a cabinet and it attenuates the cabinet. And, you got all those other cool things. I got to tell you, the software that comes with the UA aux.
It's great.
It's amazing. It's really incredible. And they've done a tremendous job with all the presets that they've designed themselves. So, it's a fabulous, like I said, I got all excited when I got it, because now I can start using all these amps that I haven't been able to turn on here in the basement.
Right,
forever.
Exactly, yeah, because now you can turn on these amps and play it, crank them up and play a great volume. And plus it comes with reverb and all these delays and,
Yeah. Yeah, you can put 1176 on it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right.
I love it. It's a lot of fun, just going through the presets like you mentioned also. We got a question from Vilco. He says, Pete and Dave's thoughts on classic Ampegs.
Dave, you want to start on that?
You know what? I am not the huge Ampeg. I mean, I've repaired a bunch over time. Obviously, Ampeg SVT is amazing for bass, a vintage one. As far as the Ampeg guitar amps go, I'm not an aficionado of those amps, so although I have repaired several of them over the years, they tend to be very brutal in their approach. So, meaning a lot like an SVT is, it's just very immediate. They are cool amps, though. I mean, I got to admit. I mean, except, well, wait. Well, now it depends on what. Let me backtrack. I am thinking more of the heads. So now, if you're talking reverb rocket or something, that is a super cool guitar amp for me. So I don't know, Peter. You have more of an Ampeg love, I think.
Yeah, I'm big into the Ampeg. Yeah, and love them, and sort of went through a whole Ampeg phase, and it started from the Rolling Stones and everybody, and it's
Yeah.
the ones that I'm into are the Stones era ones, like the late '60s, and I'll do show and tell a little more.
Oh, fun.
Like the V2.
Right.
The V2 head is the one, and that cabinet that's sort of tucked in the corner down below, which never left this basement, is one of the original late '60s 412 cabinets.
Oh boy, yeah, I remember those.
I think was a 612, but it only has 4 Altec 417s in it. So it is the get your yah-yahs amp sound, and which is why I got it. So with that head, you can totally dial in the Mick Taylor, Keith Richards sound from that period. And then tucked back there, you can see that is an Ampeg Jupiter head. That was sort of an oddball from that period. That is a really clean sounding amp and has that crazy tremolo, echo sounding tremolo on it. That's a 212 cabinet they made that's actually sort of rare. That is just a really good proper size. And then there's the GU12 that I've got down there, and I use this all the time. And I put an Altec 417C in that one as well. But man, I love them. I have one out on the road. I will say that the early ones, are not very roadworthy.
Yeah.
They probably with their age and everything, they have that suspension chassis and all that, and so we ended up having problems with mine. It's gotten a bit beat up out there on the road. I don't know how much longer I'll use them for that reason, but that's for the late ones like that. But sonically, they're their own thing. They sound great. Yeah,
they're unique in their tone for sure.
That's really are.
Awesome. Johnny Gardner has a question. Hey Peter, how do you set up your sound? Is that amp clean and you hit it with an OD, or do you have it breaking up? Love that Stonesy sound.
Thank you. I usually use it. I have it to where it's overdriving a little bit on its own, or I use 2 amps, and so lately, on the last run, I was using the Ampeg GU12 and a Princeton that I modified. In the Princeton, I put a stouter output transformer and did the preamp, just really minor stuff to the preamp where I was trying to make it replicate more the sound of a Vibrolux, to where I had the headroom of a Vibrolux. So that would be the clean amp. But as that Ampeg, I always have it to where it's just slightly breaking up so that when I kick on an overdrive pedal, it really will put it over the top. So yeah, I do the combination of both. I have it to where it gets a good gritty kind of sound on its own. And then, yes, I have 3 different overdrive pedals for different sounds.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. We'll go through we got a few more questions. Rusty, he says, are you playing Rockin' on the Runway this October?
Yes, I plan on it.
Good question.
If they can stage it, if they're still able to stage it, I would love to. We have a blast with that. Yeah. That is an event in Greenville, South Carolina. It's a fundraiser, and it's the group that puts it on is called Arizona Children's Charity, and it's not out of Arizona. Arizona was a steakhouse in Greenville, South Carolina, and the owners has started this charity years back, and they brought on Jeff Carlisi of 38 Special, I believe, initially, to assemble the bands, an all-star lineup of players. And so each year they get all these guys that are, known players and get guest guys to come in. And Jeff's a really good friend, and fortunately he invited me in to jump in. I've done 2 of them so far, and they're always a blast. Yeah. They're great. So yeah, hopefully in October. It's always in October, and it's followed up by a golf game on Monday, on the following Monday.
Well, fingers crossed that this stuff can happen.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding.
Hope so.
Till next year, before we get out. Who knows?
It may be. It may be. I mean, it seems. Well, who knows? L. Scott Music. Are all your amps plugged in? Do you have an amp Pete switcher?
An amp what switcher?
There you go. That answers that. Amp Pete is a multi-amp switcher for the studio.
Oh, okay.
You can do like 8 amps into 1 cab, or 8 amps into 8 cabs.
Right. Okay.
Really cool, man.
Any kind of thing. No, way back when the Come On record came out and I was using the Bradshaw setup, I had 5 amps, I believe. And it was doing switching between 5 amps, but they each had their respective cabinet.
Yeah, this can literally switch between 8 of your amp heads and any number of your cabinets. It's great for your studio. If you want to know more about that, contact me.
Okay, yeah, I'll check it out.
It's super cool for being able to just easily get to all your amps,
Yeah. Especially now that you have the aux.
And click while you're doing a track, just like, I want this one, I want that cabinet, I want this.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I could see that totally I could use that around here. I think to answer your question on the road, the simpler the better, really. It actually can be difficult just with the 2 amps, because it's not only the main rig that we take out, but a lot of times the way nowadays, you have to be prepared for all of a sudden a gig comes up on the opposite coast. So then you have to use rental backline in the middle of a tour, and then fly with either a second pedal board or, a second batch of guitars gets shipped out, things like that. So there's always stuff that comes up to where you don't have your ultimate rig. So I sort of prefer to keep it a little more simple. So 2 amps is about the most I'll go. Clean, a little something with a little more grit. And then that way I can rely on the pedal board and the pedals to do the rest.
Perfect.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. No, that's great.
Makes sense. I like it. Simple.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to wrap up. It's getting kind of late, and we've gone through most of the questions. So I want to thank you, Peter. Really, thanks for coming on the show. It was awesome to have you. My apologies on to everybody when I started the show with the issues, but really awesome to have you on. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's great talking with you both. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Peter, it was good. It was good seeing you again. I haven't seen you in a while.
I know it is. Yeah, likewise.
It's been a while. Years, maybe.
And Mark, you're in Florida, right?
I'm in Florida. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to hook up if and when.
I hope so. That would be awesome.
There will be a win. And Dave, likewise, man. Next time I come out, I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, please do, man. Please do. Maybe we can actually go somewhere and have a drink.
That'd be great. Yeah, absolutely.
You can only hope, right?
and it'll happen. It'll happen.
Well, they are starting to open restaurants again now, so.
Yeah. We'll have our mask with a straw through the center.
Right. Yeah. I was like thinking through the side, like a little straw in there from our margaritas. The only problem comes when you have a chip. You want a chip. It's like, what do I do now? Shit, I gotta take that. Fuck.
Oh. Ow. Oh. Yeah. Right.
I was talking to Pete Thorne about this today. We were like, so they're opening up. So does that mean we should go or no? Or I'm not sure really. Maybe I would be okay with it if it's a certain restaurant and there's outdoor patio maybe, and they're spaced out. I would prefer an outdoor patio spaced out. Yeah. I wouldn't have really a problem with it, an outdoor thing spaced out and, So all the restaurants that have an outdoor patio are going to be lucky here, because But they're making some legislation where they can like actually spill out into the sidewalks now, so they can space out their tables and things. And I really feel sorry for the restaurants because they're getting fucked, man.
Yeah,
They're fucked, man. And then coming back like this. Hey, you can open your restaurant, but you can only have half capacity. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Man, I mean, I'm not saying that it's not right, but it's just on a financial standpoint for the restaurant, it's fucked.
Yeah, it is. The whole outside thing, you're right. I mean, I've seen places around here in Atlanta, like you said, the restaurants that already had a patio, great. They're doing fine. And I've seen others to where they're spilling out, same way they're spilling out on the on the
sidewalk,
the street. And it reminded me of the one time we went to Hong Kong.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody took us into this area where at night, that's what they weren't even restaurants. They were like fish markets or whatever.
Yeah.
And they would bring out the folding tables.
Street food.
On the street. And you would walk past and they'd have styrofoam coolers with live fish in it. And you'd point out what you'd want. They'd take it in and cook it for you and bring it out and you sit at the table. And the Hong Kong, the city would just sort of overlook it. It was just something that was done, to where they'd set up and totally have to block off the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, there was a restaurant here, a relatively famous restaurant that was Vitello's. I mean, you might know Vitello's. Vitello's that was the famous Robert Blake restaurant.
Okay.
But Vitello's was selling their parking spaces. So they were booking their parking spaces in their parking lot. So it all started with someone came in and goes, "Hey, I'm going to get some carryout food, but can I eat this in your parking lot?" And they're like, "Sure. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. You're in your own car, by your own car." So they started like booking their spots in the parking lot
to just sit and eat.
Yeah. But like spaced out, like way spaced out. And these people were bringing their own little picnic tables and stuff to set up with a little chair and literally like a tablecloth and everything for their little table and everything. And they were sitting there and they were talking to their friends, but their friends were like a good damn 8 feet or 10 feet away,
Yeah.
And they were talking to them. They were just shouting, talking and they were getting around it somehow. And I'm like going, well, that's a very inventive way of making of the situation, like making the best out of the situation that they could.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a restaurant that's trying to survive.
Yeah.
I have a bar at the end of my street, literally at the end of my residential street across the Burbank Boulevard, and they were selling they actually put up a store and they were selling their stock liquor out of their bar. They're trying to sell everything off they had, just to try to make it.
Wow.
And unfortunately, that bar does not serve food of any kind, so they're not.
No, that's not bad. That's not
going to come back anytime real soon.
Yeah.
I guess the restaurants, if you serve food, you can, if you buy food, you can order a drink.
Yeah.
So like some restaurants can reopen limited capacity, but if it's a bar and if they have food, if you order food, if you order a hamburger at the bar, you can get your drink.
Right. But but they're not opening up bars.
But not all of it. And unfortunately, I hope all these places can survive in some fashion, because it's a shame to see people like just utterly cave and fail. It's horrible.
Yeah, it is horrible.
Yeah,
It is. Well, we hope everybody is healthy
yeah,
and stays well.
Think out of the box, people. Everything you can do is think out of the box.
Yeah.
That's the one good thing that can come from all this. Hopefully, is we'll see a lot of inventiveness, creativity, and
Yeah. Please try to think out of the box.
And some new music, maybe.
yes.
That's what I'd love to see, but I don't know if I'm seeing it.
Well, hopefully people are working on it in private.
Yeah, man.
It'll be cool to see what comes out in the next year. But all right, guys.
All right.
Have a great weekend.
Here, John.
Peter, thank you, man.
Yeah,
See you.
hang on one second, Peter, while we hang up. Thanks, everybody. See you next show.
Thank you.